I will say the other thing that surprised me about it was Russ finally making layups. I think he made all of his layups in that game.
Yeah.
Like every one that he makes feels like found money at this point.
He'd set a fake screen in the corner, and then there was like a zoom action where someone set a screen for him, and then he got a handoff and hit a three off of that, or shot a three.
We love running that play, but it was nice to see it again. Hey, look, like we got Peyton Watson at the 5 in a 2-point guard lineup, very small. I was like, what the hell is going on right now?
Yeah.
He just knew where to slip or cut to, and Peyton was really helpful in breaking the zone as well. He has great court awareness.
He could then theoretically pass it over to Strother for another shot. Mike obviously just gets the ball and shoots.
Oh, look at Isaiah Joe. He's like, I was supposed to, that was my rotation.
Yeah, he was like, oh, I messed that up.
Welcome back to What's in a Game. I'm Grace Jean here with my co-host Will Jones. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm actually feeling good about the Nuggets. We've had a very good streak of wins and games that we're going to get into. So
I think you might be surprised a bit at the tone I take later on in the show.
Spicy.
I might be just like in my contrarian mood, but I feel the need to temper some of the expectations for the team. But it is good to for them to have, stabilized after this very rocky start.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's actually talk about how the Nuggets have been doing. I think the last time we talked was after the Jazz game. The Nuggets have had 4 games since then. It's been 5-0 run on their home stand. Yeah. So they played the Raptors, where they won a very close game, 121-119 at home. Then a really crazy win against the Thunder without Jamal and Aaron Gordon. Another one that came down to the wire. It's a theme of the Nuggets season so far. Just like the other team having offensive possession and going for the win. And the Raptors game, it was a 3 that rattled in and out. I was at that game. I thought it was in, and then Russ was defending it pretty well. I thought maybe they'll call a foul, but it's home game. It's hard to call a foul like on the last shot like that and just like give the game to a team. So the Thunder was wild, interesting dynamics in that game. You see this short kind of rotation with the Nuggets really competing at a high level.
I mean, I didn't think they shortened the rotation. I think AG was out. Hunter Tyson played big minutes in that game, actually. And so did Zeke. Yeah, I thought we actually opened up the rotation quite a bit in that game.
I guess that's true. It fits the theme of the Nuggets like only playing 8 or 9 guys just by necessity in that game, in this case. Then a game against the Heat where we were, had a 10-point lead, then it was tied, then we got back up by however many.
We had like a 17-point lead at one point in that first quarter.
And that was nice to see the Nuggets kind of like handle a team. They scored 135 points. The Heat's defense had nothing for the Nuggets in that game, but we'll talk about that too.
Well, and the Nuggets had almost nothing for the Heat's offense.
Yeah, that was an offensive game. That was an offensive game.
Talk about that right now.
Like every game ended up, besides the Nuggets Heat game, because the Nuggets got 135 points, around the 120 mark, all of them. It's really weird. Raptors
Which
119,
is like that little
121.
threshold where like the Nuggets win like a lot of their games when they score over 120, and then substantially fewer when they score less than that.
And it was like same with the Mavs game. Kyrie was just going. He had 43 points, just an offensive explosion. The Nuggets similarly were doing pretty well on offense. I thought the Mavs defense was pretty bad in that game when I went back to look at it, but they didn't have Lively. I think that was a big part of it. I didn't think Gaffer did well. I didn't think Powell did very well either. So that game also came down to a final possession where Kyrie took a 3 and missed it. So similar themes.
Couple of final possessions.
Yeah, when I was done at the Raptors game, and that was a close one, I'm like, I don't know how many more of these close games I can handle because we had already had so many up to that point. And then every game after that, besides the Heat game, was the same.
Actually, could you talk a little bit about being at the Raptors game in person, because Will actually went to that game.
I got to go on the court beforehand because my nephew won like this raffle at his school. And so he took me along, and you just get to go and shoot around. And first look at the Nuggets for me in person this season. And I think one of the biggest things I noticed was how fast the young guys are, like Christian and Strother and Pwat. Pwat is looking better lately. Obviously, we've seen these amazing defensive plays where his explosiveness is back and his athleticism is back.
And it seemed, I think that Raptors game, the second half especially, was when it, like, I really started to see that come back.
Yeah,
for
for
him,
sure.
or like manifest itself on the court anyway.
He hit a go-ahead three in that game. That was like
Mm.
everyone just went crazy, and it was like so cool to see him pumped up by that play and like get some confidence back. And his three has been pretty good so far, or like since then. I think he didn't miss a single three against the Mavs. Yeah, one of the things that I was wondering about is I just thought MPJ looked a little slow, and I couldn't tell if that was new because he's a pretty tall guy. He's got
He's a big dude.
massive feet and legs that he's got to carry around. He looks skinny, so you almost might think he might be one of those really fast people, kind of like Pwat is, but he's had injuries and back issues, so it's not like he's dunking over people super athletically all the time, though he can do that occasionally. We had talked about his defense kind of not being great. I think his on ball's been a little slow. Like the blow bys were pretty brutal starting the season. His off ball's always been like a struggle, right? He could improve in a lot of ways, but his rotation defense has been good. I think he's still been behind on rotating and help defense and going for blocks then giving and ones, which kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a true thing or not, but his offense has been amazing the past couple of games, and
When
he's
you
like
you
getting
don't know
back
if
in
it's a
form.
true
So
thing, you don't know if it's like gonna continue
continue. Like I
or
don't know if it's like he put on more weight and he's kind of slow and he can't really stay with defenders, or if that's just how he's always been playing and he's just got to like lock in a little bit.
so having been at the Raptors game, because I want to talk about like the kind of higher level opponents that the Nuggets faced in this stretch a little bit more, but I want to know, in your opinion, having been there in person,
Hmm.
what was it about the way that the Raptors played, or like how the Nuggets came out in that game, that made it so damn close again, right? They beat the
Yeah,
Raptors in overtime in Toronto just like a week and a half ago.
very skilled, quick guards like Grady Dick just shooting the hell out of the ball and torching us. And CB
Yep.
is a great defender, but obviously he's got a lot of work to do with the very, very quick guards. And everyone is wondering, how should we guard Grady Dick? Should we put Pwat on him instead? Who's going to take him in the second half because he's going off? We kind of just kept CB on him
We did.
throughout the game, and he did okay in some spots and did better. I don't know. Pwat, I was still worried about his lateral quickness with his injury and whether or not he would have been able to keep up
Also,
with
like
Dick a
he's
ton.
not
But
he's not been the most laterally quick guy even before the injury. His on-ball defensive footwork is like, let's just say he gets a lot of margin for error because of his dimensions,
mhm.
but it's not like the most fundamentally sound stuff.
I'm really wondering about what the limits even are to his defensive versatility because we've seen him play center and then we see him guarding from the two spot, and I'm just like feeling all this out.
Yes, but the Raptors game, you think it was mostly just like the perimeter creation that did them in, and like the
Perimeter
inability to
creation, I
contain.
think Pirtle was being really aggressive. He fouled out of the
Yeah,
game, but I think like that was a part of it, and like his floater and just like his inside touch was
yeah.
killing us.
I
Um,
think they were playing a lot up at the level, and like nobody was rotating to Pirtle in time, or
yeah.
like or giving like Jokic enough time to recover. And Jokic also
Hmm.
wasn't recovering super well. Like it was like a lot, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
But
To me,
also,
like the turnovers were the biggest story of that game more than anything, which is like,
mm,
this has been the Raptors for years now. Like it doesn't matter what the personnel is, like they force turnovers, they get out and run. And they do it especially well against the Nuggets over the last few years, which is why these games are like always close, regardless of how good or mid the Nuggets happen to be
I
at
think
that
that's
time.
been a theme over the homestand too, is that's when the teams are really getting back into the game. It's just like we have one quarter with a lot of turnovers, whether it's like Russ and Jokic
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
whoever. It's just like weird little getting careless with the ball. Like I think that was the case in the Heat game too. Yeah,
Yes.
in the second
And the
quarter,
Heat like to
so
force
many.
turnovers as well. Like that is like their MO.
Yeah, the
Uh,
second quarter was just so many turnovers, just throwing passes across the court and weird, like risky, bold decisions that were just getting
we're
picked off.
yeah, we're gonna get a bit more into the Heat game, but we have to talk about the best win of this stretch, which I think is easily the game versus the Thunder,
Hmm.
right? They were up like 10 in the first half. They pushed it out to like 16 at one point in the third quarter, and it looked like okay, like they're gonna handle the Nuggets again, right? But yeah, the Nuggets were down Aaron Gordon and Jamal Murray, and the Thunder had Chet in that game. So this is before Chet's injury. They were still without Isaiah Hartenstein as he continues to recover from his injury, his preseason injury. It looked like OKC was just pretty soundly outplaying them. I thought that the starters did a good job, and Russ ended up starting because Jamal was out, but he's like there with the starting unit. This is with Peyton Watson starting again in Aaron Gordon's position. So that's like another 5-man group that actually was doing well enough to stay close within the game. But then we had this just god awful bench stint with Jokic off the floor. And then the Thunder started to make another run, and they were able to push their lead out to like 16 or 17 points off of turnovers, off of some sloppy passes. And then the second half of the third quarter comes in, and the Nuggets go on, I think it was like a 9-0 run where they were like getting stops, getting out, running, and then generating good 3-point looks. Like Russ hit a 3 in that stretch, and PJ hit a 3 in that stretch. I think Julian also hit a 3 in that stretch. And they ended up tying the game by the end of the third quarter, which was shocking to me. Russ had a crazy night in that game, 29.6 rebounds, 6 assists. And he helped kind of keep the game afloat in the non-Jokic minutes in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest note that I had about that third quarter, like that was a 40-point third quarter, was
it really?
Yeah, for the Nuggets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Jokic had 9 rebounds. That was like a game that was coming down to the wire. Like it was a clutch time game. But I think Jokic had like 1 point in like the fourth quarter.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It was all assisted. It was all assists. That's how he was controlling the game in that fourth quarter. And I want to specifically shout out the lineup of Jokic and MPJ with Christian, Julian, and Peyton. Because when we talk about the game was tied up going to the fourth, and then Russ kind of keeps them afloat. They're kind of trading baskets between them and OKC for the beginning of the fourth quarter. Jokic comes back in. They're the ones that go on the run that gives Denver a big enough lead to whether OKC like trying to chip their way back into the game. Jokic is able to weaponize particularly Christian, but also Russ as cutters on his post-ups when you have lineups that are somewhat lacking shooting. But when you look at that lineup, when you have both Julian and MPJ on the floor, that provides some versatility in how you can kind of line people up when you're running those like empty side post-ups for Jokic. And that lineup has just continued to do well since that OKC game. Friend of the show, CT Fazio, has been clamoring for the no point guard lineup. I think we probably have already played it more this season than all of last year.
Yeah, Russ obviously played point guard in that game and had a massive game. I just couldn't believe, or I mean, maybe I should have believed it, but the decision making that he was demonstrating in that game was just decision making was shocking, solid.
In that it was so good.
Just shot choices, the passing, like the when to drive. Like, I mean, we've seen him take some questionable decisions. Yeah, ill-advised decisions in some other games, but like
not advised.
The boxes that he was checking down the list in that game was almost pristine.
And, we'll talk about some of the regression he had in some games after that, but I'm glad that we got that game out of him versus his old team because we needed everything in that game. I will say the other thing that surprised me about it was Russ finally making layups. I think he made all of his layups in that game. Like every one that he makes feels like found money at this point. It felt very like it doesn't matter how close the game was. The fact that they were able to battle back into the game and then win it outright, like doesn't matter how it happened. Like that was an impressive win for me. Okay, let's get into the Miami Heat game. So Jamal Murray comes back in this game from the concussion protocol. He got a concussion during the Timberwolves game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were you one of the people that was at all worried about the chemistry of like how the team had been playing, just being like even a little off once Jamal came back?
I was curious and just to see, I mean, like I said on the last episode, him getting back to normal and being super effective and just killing teams is what is going to be the most important for the Nuggets. So I was more excited just for him to come back as soon as possible. And just like, if there are chemistry concerns, then just grind it out and keep figuring it out.
We talked about like in your summary of the games, the reason that the Nuggets were able to get out to such a big lead to start the game is because they were just running on Miami. It was really interesting how I mean, Spo likes to use his zone not sparingly, but he likes to use it in spurts. But after that, the first half of the first quarter, he was full court pressing like every possession down because he could not like the Heat could not deal with the Nuggets in transition. They had to make sure that that they were stopping them. And that was with Jamal on the floor that they were still running. I think Jamal, he wasn't walking the ball up. Often he was like, as soon if someone gave it to him after a rebound, he was like immediately like passing it up the floor. So it's not like he was necessarily like, he's not like Russ in transition where he was,
Hmm.
barreling down while dribbling the ball. But I thought he was playing with great pace, getting to his spots off ball in
Yeah.
transition and semi transition. I think that really helped out. So I was happy to see it. I'm curious to see if that continues.
Yeah, I don't think Jamal alone could be someone that could really slow a pace down, especially when you
Right.
got,
If everyone else is like, they're like,
yeah,
no, you got to keep up with us now. And maybe that's like a little bit of what's happening as well.
yeah, because you got Russ and Pwat and CB, and I think just them being young and I think they're obviously their play styles lend itself to that. There's not a ton Jamal can do. Like he can stop the ball in the half court, and as far as transition, he always is like whether he has the ball, he might do a pull up three, or he'll just run to the 3 point line and spot up if the ball gets stopped in the paint, or he'll go to the corner. And we saw Russ like hit him for a corner three.
We talked about Jamal, getting to his spots early in transition and semi-transition and really being willing to pull from three. I want that to continue, but I am so skeptical that it's going to continue. Part of what happened in the Heat game is, like I said, they were zoning up like every possession down just to stop the Nuggets transition game. So there wasn't like a pace and space aspect to Jamal's game in the second half. But there were also a lot of plays where guys are going under on screens and he's not really hunting the pull up three anymore in the second half of that game. And so he had 10 attempts, but only 8 of them were in the first half. But I think that Jamal is going to need to hunt his 3-point shot a lot more this season because of the Nuggets spacing concerns.
Yeah, so I agree with your points about him being off and on ball in transition, semi transition. Even in the half court, I liked some of what they did. I thought, oh, are they emphasizing Jamal being off ball more? Because like you'd set a fake screen in the corner, and then there was like a zoom action where someone set a screen for him, and then he got a handoff and hit a three off of that or shot
We
a
love
three.
we love running that play, but it was nice to see it again. And
He still had his possessions where he was on ball or
oh
running
yeah,
pick and
for
roll or
sure.
like going to a mid range
Especially once
jumper.
Miami started pressing, because in my opinion, Jamal was totally essential both particularly actually in the non-Jokic minutes at busting Miami's zone. Malone actually went to the Russ and Jamal lineups. It was good because you had 2 point guards on the floor who like knew like where to be to break the zone and could make the right connective passes and all of that. For all our complaints about it, that look was essential for busting the Heat's zone because they were struggling with it. Malone actually goes to a Peyton Watson at the 5 look. So it was Russ, Jamal, Julian, MPJ, and Peyton, I believe. Peyton was really helpful in breaking the zone as well. He just knew where to slip or cut to, and we talked about him and Russ running this versus the Nets. Malone talked about wanting to get Peyton on the floor at the 5, and I think he was there at the 4 in the first half, just to take advantage of some of that versatility. And part of that versatility is he has great court awareness. I was looking back through some of my old tweets from last year, and I talked about how Peyton was so essential at busting a zone versus the Phoenix Suns in a game that they played last year. Another way that he did that, so he gets to the right spot in the zone and he's able to hit this elbow midi, because we talked about this with we have, or lots of people have. We saw it in the finals in 2023. Once Jokic got to the middle of the zone, he could hit his floater, he could get to the rim, whatever it was, like the zone is cooked. And Peyton was able to do the same thing, just hitting the elbow midi, and that was really helpful. What did you think? What were you thinking when Malone rolls out this Peyton at the 5 lineup in the fourth quarter of this game?
Confused just because I never know. I've apparently have no idea what position Pwat's supposed to play. I'm like, I
There
just,
was no center on the floor. He was the
yeah.
biggest, like, or he was kind of he was playing the role of center, at least
hmm
on offense, but we'll talk a little bit about how that went defensively when we get to his segment in the show.
I mean, last season when he was taking off, there were questions about whether he could take over in bigger positions, whether that's in the 4 or the 5. Like, that was huge kind of speculation, big, bold questions. And people almost shrugged it off because he's pretty skinny, doesn't have a lot of size, muscle wise to handle some of those players. But in this case, where it was like, yeah, you just need like a skilled guard to get in there, or skilled forward to get in there and slip, or just flash to the center of the paint and get a shot
Yeah.
is cool. I was impressed that he was able to hit that midi because, his offensive game has been a question. So the fact that he was able to complete a tomahawk dunk and hit a mid-range shot was pretty impressive. Good on Malone for being like creative.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, what the hell is going on right
Yeah.
now? But hey, look, like we got Peyton Watson at the 5 in a 2-point guard lineup, very small. But again, it's the Miami Heat, and you kind of have to do some different things versus them. And they also don't necessarily have the personnel to fully take advantage of that. I think it was a good look to go to in a spurt. I'm not, I'm not playing Peyton Watson at backup 5 for
No.
the remainder of the season or anything like that. That's not that's not the solution. But reports of his washedness were greatly exaggerated.
We know that the Nuggets lost their first 2 games of the season. Now we're winning more games. Those games could have easily been lost if some players on the opposing team made some shots. Or if Jokic wasn't playing as many minutes, maybe our record would be way worse. What have been your thoughts on how we've looked on this whole homestand before we get to the Mavs specifically?
First of all, just good to see the Nuggets go up against high level competition. Like something that really stood out to me ever since the first Raptors game was how different regular season basketball is than playoff basketball. It is just a lot of slop in the regular season, especially when you're not playing high level competition. So it was good to see them play, the Thunder, the Heat, and the Mavs. I do think that offensively, the Nuggets impressed me way more than they did
Mm-hmm.
defensively.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
by far. Like it's not close. And they showed some ingenuity in shorthanded situations offensively versus very specific kinds of high level defense. In the case of OKC, it's like the way that they swarm and recover and how difficult they make it on not just Jokic, but everybody on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we talked about the zone with the Miami Heat. And then Dallas, they were missing Lively, but they still had Gafford, who's had really good rim protection numbers again this season. I think that I learned a lot about the Nuggets offensively in this stretch in a good way, but I'm going to temper that a little bit once we dig more into the actual offensive numbers. But what was your general impression of the team in this stretch?
I thought MPJ's offense stood out a lot. He's starting out these games pretty hot, just like hitting threes or whatever. He hit that floater at the end of the Mavs game. Malone had been emphasizing defense. I think now it seems that the offense looks much more impressive.
It's not close, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're like these offensive centric games where the defenses are struggling on both ends. If the Nuggets could just figure out their defense a little bit more, slow down some of these skilled guards, these games could be a lot easier. But so far,
Yep.
they're just doing just enough to win the game. I like your points about the unique styles that each team has brought. We're going to talk about Jokic in the post and those double teams. I think every team had been doubling.
He's getting doubled on, I think, 40 some percent of his post ups this season. And I think it wasn't higher than like 33 or something last year or over the last 3 years. So that's like
Mhm.
something to note as well.
think the Thunder were doing it. The Mavs definitely tried to do it. I think a lot of the teams were uncoordinated in that attempt.
Yeah.
It
I would
is,
say the OKC was probably the most coordinated, which is
yeah,
why it was impressive what they did to specifically attack the coordinated doubling
yeah,
versus the
yeah,
Thunder.
exactly. They know when they're supposed to rotate. Maybe they mess it up here or there. We'll show that later. But I thought the Mavs definitely messed up a lot. I think Gafford, like I think there was one possession where CB was wide open in the dunker spot and got an easy dunk, and Luca looked at Gafford like, "What the hell are you doing? You weren't supposed to do that." Like, I get that it's hard in the regular season to, you're playing like a base defense and to be very specific about when you're doubling Jokic and then how to rotate around the defense out of that is hard. It's even harder when the Nuggets are kind of a new team, like with CB and Russ, and it's a lot of driving and cutting, and they're still hitting their threes, and teams have been leaving Russ open from three. But he's been hitting them at a decent clip. Even just like Christian Brown, he ran some pick and pop with Jokic, and Jokic was hitting his threes against the Mavs, and CB had a pretty good pass back to Jokic, where Powell just stuck with CB on that drive. And I'm like, why is two people going with Christian on a drive and not no one's recovering back to Jokic and you're letting Jokic hit an open three? Like, that's just a huge mistake.
Because they'd rather live with his three.
Yeah, they're gonna have to start adjusting to that. If that's the case, which I love. It makes us so much harder to guard. And Jokic's threes have been really keeping us in these games in a lot of ways. Yeah, what did you think about the Mavs game? What was like any of your takeaways?
Well, a lot of my takeaways have to do with how the young players have performed, because a lot of it was like I was either impressed or less than impressed in some instances with how they've been able to created advantages basically
Mm-hmm.
that Jokic has given them, whether it's from shooting or driving or dishing. A lot of people have posted the clip of this crazy Jokic, like very water polo-esque pass where he kind of catches on like a semi-short roll from Christian and then he passes it to a cutting Julian to the rim. It's nice to see just like consistent court awareness, because that's what you need to do to be a good player around Jokic, is just know where to be on the court and
Mm-hmm.
he's going to find you. That was also a great example of something we're going to talk about later, which is how much ball handling in pick and roll that Christian's been doing over, especially the last few games, but even like it was with Jamal out, but also Jamal was there for that Dallas game and we still had some of these lineups where Christian was at point. So that's something we're going to talk about with him specifically. If you don't have any more thoughts on the Dallas game, I wanted to get to some of the offensive numbers.
I mean, there was the second quarter of that Mavs game where the Mavs went 100% on their free throws and they made 7 of them, and the Nuggets didn't make any. In the third, we were 12 of 13 on our free throws, and the Mavs were 4 of 7. He went 8 for 8 on free throws in the third quarter and was just rebounding the hell of the ball. The Nuggets free throw rate has always been a point of discussion because it was so terrible last year. We bring in Russ to try and generate more free throws by their aggressiveness on offense. So,
And that's not just Russ, it's also Christian, because of all these transition opportunities that we're generating by pushing pace and that he's generating by being really intentional about pushing pace and being in position to do these Matt Moore likes to call them fullback dives. Just like do something with the ball in transition, and often it's getting to the free throw line and he's making them. So that's good.
that was just like the first point I wanted to talk about in relation to the Mavs and the offensive numbers and whether even that is sustainable. Because we talked last episode about stats that through a certain point in the season holds or seems like realistic that this is what the team is.
Yeah, no, I wanted to talk about the offense a bit, and thanks for teeing that up for me with the free throw rate, because one question that one may have is why the offensive numbers are so good despite missing some of our best offensive players over the past week or so, with Aaron being out and then Jamal being out for that stretch. Malone made this interesting comment, I believe, is after the Heat game, where they are leading the league in points per game over from the Heat game back 7. I hate using points per game. So let's get into the pace adjusted numbers. And they're actually still second in adjusted offensive rating. This was true, I believe, in our last show, which was shocking given how bad the overall numbers were. But these are adjusted for how difficult was the defense that you faced. Thankfully, we played like the best defense apparently ever in the Thunder, and then the Clippers are
Yeah.
actually pretty good. So those numbers, I was like, this isn't going to hold if the Nuggets keep like shooting like this, all that. They didn't keep shooting like garbage. They are actually shooting 40% as a team from three right now, second in the league behind the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are on quite the hot streak of their own. The other thing that's kind of buoying this is the increased pace. Russ is really pushing pace, but even with Russ off the floor, Nuggets are playing at over 100 possession pace per game, which is huge because as we talked about with Matt Moore last season, they were dead last in pace and they were, or maybe they were 27th in pace, but they had actually gotten slower from the year prior, which doesn't happen. Like usually you just get a little bit faster just kind of by accident because the league is just getting faster every year, but they had gotten slower. This year they're way faster. We talked about how pace is one of those statistics, like you mentioned, that you can kind of judge a team on this early in the season. That 101 possessions per game is 7th in the league. They're also 7th in the length of offensive possessions, which I don't know how I feel about that yet, because I think a lot of that is the non-Jokic minutes and some of those ill-advised shots
Yeah.
maybe that the Russ is taking, but there is an emphasis on like getting into stuff early. And we're going to talk more specifically about the cutting off of post-ups and such, but the Nuggets are like leading the league in cuts right now and points off of cuts, which is crazy because it's usually Golden State and they usually have the pace edge as well. But because we're pushing the pace and doing all that stuff, I think that's also, helping things. And the free throw rate is another big part of it, right? One of the things that hasn't looked as smooth is the spread pick and roll game between Jamal and Jokic. And that's not surprising given the spacing. Because Christian's shot, as much as he's making right now, is just, it's not respected like KCP's was. And so there's less room to operate in the middle of the floor. But everything else is more efficient. They happen to be making their shots right now, their 3-point looks. Inside the paint, it's tough. And it's like, I think, again, a product of like the spacing that isn't, the shooting that isn't respected on the perimeter. The paint is so packed, but they're just repeatedly hammering those shots at the rim. Like we're leading the league in rim frequency right now. So they were 4th last year, where 37% of their shots came at the rim in terms of frequency. And this season, they're actually 2nd behind Portland, but it's almost 41%. That's basically a 10% jump relative to how like you're taking 10% more shots at the rim this year compared to last. But I think we're still dead last in efficiency. So like, how do you feel about that?
I mean, the Nuggets offense has always been about getting super efficient paint touches. So, we're just sticking to our game plan. I don't know if it's just because Russ and Pwat were just missing so many layups at the beginning of the season. It was just like brutal. Like I could see that really cratering the efficiency. They've been better lately. I think Russ is always going to be a mixed bag with that. I think Pwat's going to improve with it as time goes on. He's been showing flashes. If he just like stays disciplined on his dunks, not try anything crazy unless it's like obvious that he's going to get a wide open dunk, kind of like he did on that slip versus the Heat.
I will say, though, that even the starters are not super impressive with their rim efficiency. Jokic is shooting less than 65% at the rim. AG, I think, was like 50 something when he left, small sample size and all that. Jamal is the one who's struggling the most. Like he can't even get into the restricted area anymore with the way that teams are guarding them.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm saying like that aspect and like Jamal and like, especially in pick and roll, is just looking very much stifled compared to the last 2 years. But all of these other things are making up for it right now. But the shooting, like I don't expect Christian to keep shooting 50% from three the rest of the season, for example, even if he keeps up like a good, efficient percentage.
Yeah. I do think
they're kind of shooting above their heads right now.
Yeah, they are for sure. I think sometimes too the Nuggets are just passing up CB.
Yes, I
Because
agree.
teams aren't guarding him, of course, on the three, and we're giving it to him, and he's either driving or he's just shooting the three and hitting them. and
Right,
I,
but we're not always giving it to him.
yeah, like we're not going to it early. Like it's there, and we're running something else, and yeah, the
Yeah.
paint can be stifled. Sometimes we give it up, or we like wait a little bit too long. If we just start getting it to him more and letting him shoot it, obviously the percentage is going to go down with more attempts for him, but like he's so open right now, and I think Jokic fully trusts him. He's like directing other players like Christian's open, or when he has the ball, he's like
It's
Christian's
not
open.
Jokic also looks him off too. He's been looking off a lot more people. But I think part of that is he's trying to be more aggressive. He is looking guys off more. You wouldn't be able to tell because of the assist numbers this year.
Yeah,
But there have been a lot of times in these games where I'm like, okay, Peyton's wide open because Chet does not care about Peyton in the corner. And then Chet is able to like come over and block
hmm
Jokic's shot. Or, I saw him look off Hunter like wide open, like no defender within like 10 feet of him. And Jokic is like trying to operate in that like short mid range area, which is fine because I think he made the shot anyway. Jokic and Jamal have both been doing it. It's just more forgivable when Jokic does it because I actually think he'll be able to make the shot. Jamal needs to be better about getting the ball out to guys when they're open because that paint is just it's clogged right
yeah.
now.
And his decision making was a little rough at the start of the season, which maybe it was just he was getting used to that
Yeah.
dynamic. I like how they've looked lately, even though the paint is clogged. Like there's ways that they'd been creating space, especially against the Thunder, which we'll talk about. So yeah, with that, with the offense of these players, do you want to get to the plays, the thing, and talk about
Let's
these
do
slot
it.
cuts?
Let's do it.
All right, so as you know, we love Shakespeare around here, and there's a famous quote from Hamlet where he
Oh,
says,
the best one.
yeah, the play's the thing that catches the soul of the king, catches the king, something like that. Anyway, we're going to go over a concept here or a certain play and just talk about how it's been working in the Nuggets offseason or working in the Nuggets offense
The
this
off
season.
season is over. Well, we're in the
We
regular season.
Yeah, saying it so much. So, yeah, a key thing has been the slot cuts because spacing is still a concern, I guess you would say, and shooting is something that Calvin Booth is constantly monitoring. We saw this super early on with CB, where even if players are leaving him open on offense, he can always cut, or if he gets the ball, drive instead of shoot the three. He's uh, mixing it up a little bit. Sometimes he shoots the open three, sometimes he just drives. And he's been finishing around the rim, and he's been producing on offense. It's been good to see. So let's take a look. I've posted this online on Twitter and on Blue Sky, which you can now follow if you want. Anyway, so like you said with pace, we've been going to Jokic in the post much more quickly, I think, than normal, which is also helpful. So when he's in the post, you're either going to get a double from off Mike right here where Alex Caruso's doing so. And if Jokic passes it out to Mike, and if Isaiah Joe rotates over to MPJ, he could then theoretically pass it over to Strother for another shot, which helps to have a spacer in Strother in this alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So on this time, Mike obviously just gets the ball and
Oh, look at
shoots.
Isaiah Joe. He's like, I knew I was supposed to. That was my rotation.
Yeah. He was like, oh, I messed that up. Fuck it. It was a clear, like, and
That
even
is so
Alex
funny.
Caruso knew that that was what he was supposed to do. So this is the very next play, actually, off of that. And so it's the same thing. Alex Caruso is going to double, but this time Shea's like, oh, I know I have to rotate. That's where he messed up last time. But he's already going before the pass even
Isaiah
gets
Joe's
there.
already in there too. Like, what's he? He looks like he's about to catch a defensive 3 seconds.
Yeah, he's in the
Isaiah Joe.
paint. Yeah, what is he doing there? Maybe it doesn't even matter because Christian can just cut, and Isaiah Joe being there didn't even do anything. He steps up, I guess, gets
Yeah.
contact. There's no foul, but CB finishing through there is pretty impressive.
I thought this was that last one was a good example of Christian's timing, but this one will be also.
Yeah, this one was interesting because Jokic bobbled the entry pass. He's already doubled, like pretty much right off the get-go. He's right under the basket. You would think like Peyton cutting right into that wouldn't be good. It's like bringing another
It
defender there.
wasn't actually. This was a
Yeah,
really like messy example of the same thing.
yeah, like
Because
it's
Jokic bobbled the entry pass, I think Peyton's like ready just off of if this was a clean possession. So he just runs for the timing without accounting for that kind of messiness on the post entry.
If he stayed with Strother, there could be a potential like dump off pass to Pwat there that Jokic could do, and like he could maybe score around the rim. But luckily, I don't even think Jokic knew Pwat was cutting because he just immediately
Right.
turned to look at the weak side. And luckily, Payton was cutting at the same time and took that defender, and then Strother gets an open three. So that worked out really
Nice.
well.
That's a good example of what I was talking about earlier with like having some roll gravity off ball. Or like I guess all rolls are off ball where Peyton's able to take a defender with him and open things up outside,
Yeah.
just like AG does.
So a little more coordinated one, of course. It's the same like theory. Obviously, if Jokic is doubled and Russ is on the perimeter, someone's probably going to go close out to or rotate to Strother. He's the shooter. But
Right.
Russ is just like the decision making even on this cut and Jokic being in lockstep with it. Like the action happens super quick. It's a really
Yeah.
easy read.
And then Russ,
Misses it,
he
but
doesn't I was gonna say Russ finishing it, but then, Jokic
no.
finishes it.
Jokic cleans it up, which is another benefit of playing out of the post if Jokic is already down there to get an offensive rebound.
Christian
CB,
cuts. Isaiah Joe picks him up a lot higher than the last time.
yeah. So both Shea and Isaiah Joe rotate to Strother, and then
Oh, and then he's really patient here. I forgot about this possession. This was good.
yeah,
Uh
Julian has kind of been doing this, which I don't know if it's good or not. Maybe the patience is good, sometimes it's not, but
Oh no, that he was because Shea's gonna block this if he tries to shoot it. I know Julian has he's got a good release and like all that, like quick release, but Shea has blocked lots of because that's the thing with the Thunder is they have such good closeouts,
mhm.
but he waits and then just is like, oh, Christian's wide open under the rim and gets it to him on time, on target, like right on time to
Yeah, it was
get that
close.
layup before Chet was
I
able
think when I
to.
saw that live, I thought it was going to be a turnover with Dort. Thankfully, that was a quick pass. And yeah, just like Jokic being in the post and being able to pop out to the perimeter can open up stuff on the weak side and, just cutting through slots, especially if teams are playing off shooters. So it's like you can create space, obviously, without just needing to shoot threes. And the Nuggets have been
Yeah.
doing that with these guys, which I think plays into the strength of the roster and these Project Dynasty Booth boys that we've been talking about. So
Yeah. I actually had in my notes here wondering how Jamal's return changes the geometry of this. But the more I think about it, I'm like, oh, it's just gonna be Jamal instead of Julian or someone out there.
yeah,
But how does AG's return change the geometry of this? Is it just like AG instead of Peyton and like both of them are equally
yeah.
ignored from the from that weak side
I think,
corner?
yeah, AG would probably be weak side corner and could maybe, if like people were really good about like staying home or guarding, rotating out of it, maybe he could baseline cut dunker spot and
Yeah.
Jokic could get
Yeah.
him from the post.
Like he does.
Something like that,
Which I
probably.
miss. I miss AG dunks.
Yeah, I know. All right, so before we talk specifically about the Project Dynasty players, let's look at the Nuggets' next 10 games. You want to go through and predict their record. So Pelicans are super injured right now. That's going to be a NBA Cup game. I'm going to say that's a W, right?
Okay, so for me, I agree. The Pelicans are very injured, and we should win that game. If they lose that game, I will be very mad, on the road or not.
So Memphis, we play them 2 times. Is this a back-to-back in Memphis?
Yes.
I'm going to say we lose the first and win the next one.
I actually agree with you. They're going to win one, lose the other, but I think they're going to win the first one and lose the second.
Okay, yeah.
Dallas, I think they're going to win because they're at home. Even with Lively back, I think they'll have figured some things out. We'll see. That's also the NBA Cup game.
I'll say we lose that. Then at the Lakers, they're playing pretty good. Actually, they've kind of fallen a bit.
They're mid, man. Like they're mid again.
I'm gonna say W.
I actually think the Lakers might be an L. So I put an L there just because they don't have AG. They're going to be a lot more reliant on Peyton Watson to guard LeBron.
Mhm.
And I haven't watched the Nuggets play a game where they didn't have AG to guard LeBron. So I'm incredibly worried about that. Uh, W
What if
against the
what if
Knicks. Oh, sorry,
CB
go ahead.
guards LeBron and Peyton guards AD?
I mean, Jokic, who's Jokic guarding?
Oh, Rui. I don't know.
Who's
I don't know.
MPJ guarding? Like,
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. We'll see. Knicks. Ooh, that's at home. That's a win.
yeah. So Knicks, I'm going to give them a W. Like, take care of business at home. They're a really bad defensive team right now, and Apparently the Nuggets are fine when they can score whatever.
Then we have the Jazz away. We're finally going to exercise some demons, win.
They did that last season. They won a
we
Jazz
did?
game
I
in Utah,
forgot.
yeah.
Okay,
It
so
was
we're
the
going to...
day before game 80 against the Wolves.
We've broken the curse, so we're going to continue on.
Utah W, again, like, I think they should just be taking care of that Jazz team. That Jazz team is so bad right now, like, way worse than even I thought.
The Clippers, we're going to get our revenge on them.
Clippers, I think W, like, they got to get that one back because they should have won that game at home.
Ooh, we're going to beat the Warriors.
I'm going to give them an L because I just think that Steph Curry is going to have his way with our team without KCP right now. And I'm going to give them an L for Cleveland, not just because Cleveland's playing so well, but I don't know if AG is going to be back by then. In fact, I would bet against it just in terms of being cautious. And Evan Mobley's been playing like an all-star. So without AG to guard him, it's just like, that's Raps. In addition to being on the road versus Cleveland, like, that's not a team that they've ever taken seriously on the road, unfortunately. So, yeah, I think they're going to get smacked in that game, actually.
All right. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. We lost
Also,
to them
we have
last
no one
year,
for Darius
at least
Garland,
once, I think, on the road. So I'm going to say a loss.
Okay.
So
So another 7-3.
7-3.
This is a good show, Will.
Yeah, very fun. Thanks for listening, everyone.
If you like our content, please do us a favor and hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and definitely subscribe. Leave us a review if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or Amazon Music, or just go over to there, hit the show page, and then give us a 5-star review anyway. And always remember that winning is fun and losing absolutely sucks.